And now we have Sudhakar Ramakrishna. He is the CEO of PulseSecure. And we are going to begin his presentation right now.
Good day, and thanks for joining. I'm Bob Bragdon, Managing Director of CSO. As the world has accelerated into the new workplace dynamic of work from home and work remote, managing the risks inherent in these models has become significantly more challenging. But for those organizations that are moving down the path towards a zero trust model, the road can be a bit less bumpy. I wanted to explore this issue a little further, so today we're speaking with Sudhakar Ramakrishna, CEO of PulseSecure. If you're not familiar with them, PulseSecure provides easy, comprehensive, software-driven secure access solutions that provide enterprise productivity, visibility, and protection. They have 80% of the Fortune 500 and more than 24,000 customers across every industry in the globe, so they are in an ideal place to provide some insights into this topic. Sudhakar, thanks for sitting down with us today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bob. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, thank you very much. So what's changed with remote access? Why am I seeing a resurgence in the technology, and why is it now strategic?
Bob, remote access has always been strategic to enterprises, albeit for a section of the enterprise, meaning that at any point in time, remote access technologies were being used, let's call it about a third of the employee population at any point in time. However, with the unfortunate advent of the pandemic, COVID-19, business continuity and remote productivity, if I can use that term, has become even more significant, to the point where it is important to every employee in the business, including all mission-critical employees. And therefore, it's become much more strategic, much more relevant than it ever was. To be fair, some countries and some enterprises were already going down that path for a variety of other reasons. Business continuity, real estate consolidation, hybrid IT deployments, and so on were driving the force, and mobility obviously were driving the force behind remote access and remote connectivity. And when I say remote access, I mean it in somewhat of a broader connotation here than traditional remote access. This is remote productivity. And so as a result, it's become much more relevant and much more strategic across boardrooms, across audit committees, and across enterprises at large.
So how has zero trust evolved from being an industry buzzword to become a corporate reality? I mean, how practical is zero trust when it comes to access? And maybe you could also comment on where and how you see your customers apply this model.
Definitely. Then the nature of access itself is continually changing, largely because of resources and applications being distributed all across private, public, and data centers, private, public clouds and data centers, as well as users such as us are always mobile, using our own device, working from anywhere, and wanting to be productive at all points in time. This causes not only access challenges, but security challenges. The traditional model was fairly straightforward in the sense that people who are inside an enterprise boundary, secure by nature or by definition, so to speak, whereas people coming from the outside of the network had to be protected. Unfortunately, as you know, most of the high-profile breaches recently started from inside the network due to policy challenges, policy fragmentation, password issues, and so on, and malware, of course. That led to the notion of zero trust, where you had to protect everybody and couldn't trust anyone. And so there are a few fundamental principles that you can apply as it relates to zero trust. One is, how do you establish common access regardless of where your location is? Meaning whether you're outside or inside the network, be it a device or a user, how do you establish common access and uniform access? And those are the types of things that vendors like us are doing that enable Zero Trust to be much more relevant, much more practical. And in fact, you mentioned the number of customers that we have. Many of our customers are using us for Zero Trust without doing overly fancy things with regards to change of infrastructure, change of solutions, because even that becomes very expensive for customers, and it is important to evolve them to this world of hybrid.
What are the operational aspects and the key considerations for customers who want to take advantage of secure access and Zero Trust?
Wonderful question, Bob. Main things that they need to think about are, how are my policies being defined and how fragmented are my policies, and what can I do to unify them? That's the first and foremost thing, because fragmentation of policy creates security challenges, administrative burden, and we are all about enterprise productivity. When we say enterprise productivity, the administrator's productivity is equally important in that whole mix, because as you know, most administrators, most CIOs have more things to do today with fewer resources. So how do you simplify their lives? So user experience, we use the term broadly, also means simplification of administrative experiences that lead to improved productivity for them. So that's the most fundamental thing that we need to think about. Two is, I would call it portability of resources, meaning don't constrain end users and enterprises to a particular paradigm of work. Those days are gone where we can force a specific, you and I, I'm sure, want to not even be imposed on what laptop to use or what operating system to use, but yet we are wanting to be productive. So the flexibility is important. Therefore, the number of device types that you support and where you deploy applications for economic benefits, business velocity, etc., become very important as well. So any solution has to enable the enterprise to have that level of flexibility, to have the portability of resources, be it device, be it applications, or resources. The third is to not have bespoke solutions for when you have a perimeter versus when you do not have a perimeter. So it kind of ties back a little bit to the policy point I made, but this is across the entire software spectrum. So these are some of the things that customers have to look for when they evaluate vendors, and then the comprehensiveness of Zero Trust itself. While Zero Trust is a very, very, very important and strategic construct, different vendors are coming at it from different ways. And some come with point solutions, and some come with much more extra, I would say, some more elaborate way of looking at Zero Trust. Where, for instance, in our case, we establish trust at a user, device, network, and application level. So you got to be able to do it across multiple dimensions and multiple modalities of access.
So what are some of the innovative security capabilities that cloud-based secure access solutions can bring to an organization?
Definitely. Cloud is a very important consideration, as you know, and as has been deployed. The way we have been thinking about the world and the way we have seen customers deploy cloud is much more of a hybrid way of doing it in the broader context of digital transformation. So even the very first question that you asked about remote access and the strategic nature of it has all got to do with a broader trend of digital transformation. And so in terms of the innovations, going back to what we discussed about the policy islands and fragmentation, defragmentation, how do you make a user experience seamless, regardless of whether they are accessing something in the cloud or whether they are accessing a traditional data center app that was written 15 years ago, still relevant to them? There is significant innovation possible in terms of tying those two things together and not forcing a specific paradigm on enterprise customers. So that is one aspect of innovation that is ongoing. Additionally, there are some, because of the portability aspect that I described, where we are all portable, understanding user and entity behavior, broadly referred to as UEBA, using a variety of artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities, will allow CISOs, CIOs, and IT administrators to identify and thwart threats much more quickly. And so there's significant innovation in that space. And when you have multi-dimensional access, like what I was describing earlier across user, device, network, application, you're able to come up with like very innovative ways of understanding user behaviors, entity behaviors, and protecting enterprises proactively. That is really the second piece of it. And third is ecosystem integrations. Customers do not want to be, call it the labs for vendors. They expect the ecosystem to work together. And so there are very innovative API-based approaches to bring together ecosystem capabilities to reduce the threat surface for enterprises as well.
Sudhakar, staying on that innovation topic, can you expand on how AI and ML are being used for secure access?
Definitely. This is actually a very exciting field of continual innovation, I would say. When I say continual innovation, it's in the context of when we think about access and authentication, people think of them as static concepts. As secure access evolves, access and authentication are continuous and adaptive. For instance, how do you escalate a user's privileges? How do we decrease a user's privileges or an entity? When I say entity, a thing in this context. So as users, we typically have specific roles, like I'm an administrator, I'm a finance person, and so on. As the world of devices comes into secure access, the roles and realms, so to speak, continually expand, and therefore access and authentication also have to be continuous and adaptive. And so this requires constant application of machine learning, as in you're learning about the behavior of users and entities, and then applying those learnings to detect risk scores, for instance, for various entities, and then basically take corrective actions dynamically without administrator intervention. So that whole area is prime for the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And being an access company, we are at the forefront of driving some of the innovation in that space.
So then where do you think the trends will evolve secure access to over the next few years?
So over the next few years, I believe Internet of Things becomes a lot more relevant for us. So far, Internet of Things has been somewhat separate from the broader security ecosystem, and the security considerations as it relates to devices, and especially devices that are invisible, so to speak, to you and I, but they still exist, has not been a huge area of concern. And we believe that the same forms of common access, the same principles of zero trust also apply in that segment. And therefore, those should be carried forward. Related to that is the user and entity behavior analytics pieces, which again, devices behave differently than you and I as humans. And that creates an additional possibility for innovation and trend going forward. I will also highlight, going back to the very first question you asked, Bob, that remote productivity is here to stay. Every enterprise that we talk to after this pandemic are not saying it'll be coming back to the same way of working. And therefore, there are innovative possibilities across user experiences, simplification, policy integration across the board, which will all have to be expanded to multiple forms of access and multiple devices, which in many cases will be several fold more than the number of employees that are there in enterprises.
Well, Sudhakar, thanks for sharing your insights with us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks a lot, Bob. Thanks for having me.